When you think of top financial companies, what names come to mind? BlackRock, JP Morgan, titans of the industry. But what if I told you there is a company right now out-earning these brands while having less than 300 employees, getting more profit per employee than any other company in the world? They aren't a bank, they aren't regulated by the US government, and for a decade, the world's smartest short sellers have been betting on their failure. This is Tether, the $140 billion company that shouldn't exist, yet somehow became the world's most essential currency. To understand Tether, you first have to understand the problem it was born to solve. Bitcoin was revolutionary. It was also, for anyone trying to actually use it as money, a nightmare. Its price could double in a week, collapse in a day. For traders who wanted to step out of a position, there was nowhere to go. Moving back into real dollars meant leaving the ecosystem entirely. Bank transfers, delays, fees, days. The crypto world was a casino with no chip desk, no way to cash in without cashing out completely. This was a problem that had to be solved, and the solution came from three men who looked exactly like the dream team Silicon Valley would fall in love with. You had Brock Pierce, a former child actor turned VC, Reeve Collins, a serial entrepreneur, and Craig Sellers, a top-tier developer. Their idea was simple: a digital token tethered to the dollar. One token, forever backed by $1. They called it RealCoin, soon rebranded as Tether. Traders sprinted toward it. It was the ultimate hideout from market bloodbaths. But as the volume exploded, a strange transformation happened. The famous founders began to vanish, and the dream team was quietly replaced by a group of ghosts. The keys to this billion-dollar kingdom were handed over to men like Giancarlo Devasini, a former Italian plastic surgeon who had pivoted from fixing faces to importing hardware, once even landing in a legal battle with Microsoft over pirated software. Then there was the CEO, Jean-Louis van der Velde, a man so reclusive he practically didn't exist in the public eye. These weren't traditional bankers. They were offshore operators running an empire from shadowy accounts. And as their power grew, so did the suspicion. By 2017, the tension reached a breaking point. This was the year of the great crypto bull run, where Bitcoin skyrocketed from $1,000 to $20,000. But critics noticed a pattern. Every time the market dipped, millions of new tethers were printed and sent to exchanges. A controversial study later claimed Tether was being used to pump Bitcoin, creating artificial demand out of thin air. If the critics were right, the entire $20,000 peak was a hallucination built on digital ink. Then came the first major crack in the hull. In November 2017, a hacker vanished with $31 million in USDT. Tether's response was radical. They triggered a hard fork, essentially rewriting the laws of the blockchain to hit a remote kill switch. Overnight, that $31 million fortune became a digital paperweight, a trophy in the hacker's wallet they could never spend. It was a brilliant move to save the company, but it exposed a massive secret. Tether has a God mode button. Unlike Bitcoin, this isn't decentralized. It's a private kingdom where your money is only yours as long as the ghosts say it is. The coin survived, but the questions became deafening. If the leadership is hiding in the shadows, and they have the power to delete money at will, is the promise of one token, forever backed by $1, even real? In 2019, the hammer finally dropped. The New York Attorney General launched a massive investigation. They didn't just ask about the reserves, they accused Tether of a massive cover-up. The allegation was that Bitfinex, Tether's sister exchange, had lost $850 million to a payment processor in Panama called Crypto Capital. To hide the loss from their customers, the AG claimed that Tether had lent its own reserves to Bitfinex to fill the hole. This was the moment the Tether is a scam camp had been waiting for. It was proof that the reserves weren't a stagnant pile of cash. They were being moved around like a shell game to bail out related businesses. This was a betrayal of their core promise of one token forever backed by $1. If the dollars were being lent out to bail out their sister exchange, they weren't sitting in a vault protecting you. They were being used in a high-stakes shell game, meaning if everyone tried to cash out at once, the vault would have been $850 million short. Tether fought the New York AG for 2 years and finally settled for $18.5 million. Crucially, they didn't admit wrongdoing, but they were banned from doing business in the state of New York. And here is the part that confounds every economist who has ever looked at the data. Through the hacks, through the investigations, through the billions of dollars in missing funds, and through 1,000 Tether truthers on Twitter predicting an imminent collapse, the market didn't leave. Tether didn't die. In fact, it grew faster than ever. Why? Because in the world of global finance, convenience is a more powerful force than trust. Traders didn't necessarily trust Tether's leadership, but they trusted that the token would still be worth $1 tomorrow because everyone else agreed it was. Tether had achieved Lindy effect status. The longer it survived the skeptics, the more people believed it was unkillable. Then, the world changed in a way that Tether's founders could never have predicted. While Western analysts were arguing over audits and banking regulations, the real-world economy was entering a period of absolute chaos. Central banks printed money at a scale unseen in peacetime to combat the pandemic. Inflation didn't just rise, it exploded. In Turkey, the lira lost half its value in months. In Argentina, the peso became a liability to hold for more than 24 hours. In Nigeria, Vietnam, and Lebanon, ordinary people watched their life savings dissolve in real time. These people weren't crypto enthusiasts. They weren't looking to get rich on the latest meme coin. They were teachers, taxi drivers, and small business owners who just needed a way to hold a US dollar. But for most of the world, getting a US dollar is nearly impossible. You need a bank account, you need a high net worth, and you need permission from a government that often wants to stop you from fleeing the local currency. Tether became the underground dollar. It was a currency you could hold on a $50 smartphone without a bank account, without a broker, and without anyone's permission. In 2022, Tether's daily volume surpassed Bitcoin's. It wasn't because of speculation, it was because Tether had become the primary rail for global peer-to-peer commerce. It was the shadow dollar, moving through the cracks of the traditional financial system.
Then came the ultimate stress test. In May 2022, a rival stablecoin called Terra USD, which was backed by an algorithm rather than actual dollars, collapsed to zero in a matter of days. $40 billion of wealth vanished overnight. The panic spread instantly to Tether. For a few hours, Tether depegged, dropping to 94 cents. Critics were screaming that this was the end. Short sellers moved in for the kill. In one of the most incredible displays of liquidity in financial history, Tether processed $10 billion in a single week. Every person who wanted their real dollar back got it. Tether paid out $10 billion without blinking. When the dust settled, Tether was still standing and the skeptics were silenced. They had survived a bank run that would have crippled most mid-sized American banks. This leads us to the final, most ironic chapter of the story. Tether's business model has undergone a radical transformation. In the early days, they were desperate for any bank that would take their cash. Today, they are one of the largest holders of US government debt in the world. Tether takes the billions of real dollars it receives from users and invests them, mostly in short-term US Treasury bills. For years, when interest rates were near zero, this was a low-margin business. But when the Federal Reserve began aggressively hiking rates in 2022 and 2023, Tether's black box turned into a literal money-printing machine. By 2023, Tether was reporting a net profit of nearly $10 billion a year. To put that in perspective, JP Morgan, the most powerful bank in the world, employs over 300,000 people and has a history spanning over a century. Tether, with fewer than 300 employees, is earning more profit per person than almost any institution that has ever existed. They are, essentially, a sovereign wealth fund-sized operation running on the headcount of a small tech startup. Analysts now compare Tether not to a crypto company, but to Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett built his legendary empire on what he calls the float, insurance premiums that sit in a reserve, waiting to be paid out, while he invests that money into productive assets in the meantime. Tether has built the ultimate digital float. They hold $140 billion of user money that they don't have to pay interest on, while they collect 5% interest from the US government. They are using those massive profits to expand their empire far beyond stablecoins. While everyone was watching the charts, Tether has been funneling its massive billions into a multi-front takeover of the physical and digital world. Under their new four-pillar empire, Tether Power is dominating Bitcoin mining from the volcanoes of El Salvador to the renewable grids of Atacoagro in South America. Meanwhile, Tether Data has secured a $1 billion stake in Northern Data Group, locking down the high-performance GPU compute power needed to fuel the AI revolution through their local, private AI platform, QVAC. But they aren't stopping at software. Through Tether Evo, they've taken a majority stake in Blackrock Neurotech, diving headfirst into brain-computer interfaces to compete directly with Neuralink. From mining the world's hardest money to controlling the chips that think and the ones in our brains, Tether is no longer just a crypto company. It's an all-out bid for the future of human technology. In the end, Tether didn't win because it was the most transparent or the most regulated. It won because it solved a problem that the traditional banking system refused to touch. It gave the world a dollar it could carry in its pocket, and in doing so, it created a financial monster that is now too big to fail. As we look toward the future of the global economy, the question isn't whether Tether has the money. The question is what a company with $10 billion in annual profit and no oversight decides to do with it next. Tether began as a way to escape the system, but in 2026, it has become a system all its own.